Pops and Hisses, a music podcast where you hear from the artists you love. I'm your host, Kevin Coffey, and in this episode, we have singer-songwriter, artist, writer, and all-around really interesting dude, Brett Newski. Maybe you know Brett from his music. He's a great singer-songwriter from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he's been putting out records for about 10 years, but he also makes drawings and cartoons, often about depression and anxiety, offering kind of pro tips and life hacks for navigating things. They're funny and always insightful, and right now he's collecting them into a book, which is being released with an accompanying album. It's called It's Hard to Be a Person, and it's something like Brett's shows. They're often described as something of a mix between music, comedy, and a little bit of therapy, and it's really fun that the new project kind of collects all of those together. The new album is out June 18th, and the book will follow the next week on June 22nd. Brett was a great guest, and I was really happy to have him on the podcast to talk about the book, talk about his new songs, and also chat about stuff like video games and caffeine and anxiety and stuff too. Real quick, I want to remind you that you can listen to the Pops and Hisses podcast and find music news, reviews, and interviews at popsandhisses.com. But right now, it's time for Brett Newski. Let's get into it. Every podcast that I've done recently has started out this same way. So what have you been doing for the last year or so? Especially musicians used to being, out on the road or doing different stuff, and a lot of us have just been kind of stuck at home.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been trying to make stuff, that's I'm in a pretty lucky spot this year where that was like my kind of sole mission. I'd started a podcast also. Yep. And just kind of like being a creative person in my little house and not having to like drive an unmarked white van all around America was pretty sweet. I mean, I've always been pumped on the tours and the travel. But I think I was just, unbeknownst to me, I was kind of losing the plot a bit of just like going too fast and going faster physically than my brain was like capable of going. I think, like this American hustle of like trying to,
right. Yeah,
do more dates and just like do the thing and like get work done. And I don't think it was really good for me as much as I thought it was.
Yeah, for us, it was kind of realizing how much time you're spending doing all this different stuff. And my wife and I have been working from home, our home office, for now more than a year, and it's like everything kind of slowed down, and it was really nice to just be able to focus a little. If that makes sense.
You got an arcade behind you. What's going on there? Is that what you were doing all the year?
That was my first. Yeah, over my shoulder is this arcade, and this was my first like pandemic project. I had started building it, but of course I'm always doing 8 different projects, so
that's cool.
It wasn't really done, and so I finished building the whole thing. Right now it's like in some weird text mode. I don't know why. It's got like 14,000 arcade games on it.
And you built that, so you program it and then build the giant box around it.
So the inside is a Raspberry Pi little computer.
Cool.
And you just download the operating system is free. And then built this is all made of plywood, painted, and then the buttons all came from Amazon.
Nice. That's cool. I've never known anyone who can do that before. All right, what's your like 90s game of choice?
The things we play all the time are like, and I have little kids, and they love, of course, what Dad loves. So the stuff we play all the time is like the Ninja Turtles games, or like,
oh yeah,
I like Mortal Kombat and stuff, but that's probably a little too.
Are we talking like Sega Genesis?
Yeah, and then that's the other thing. There's regular arcade games on there, but there's also a Genesis, Super Nintendo, and another system that I'm now forgetting, of course, also programmed in.
Wow. Yeah, everything all at once. It's overwhelming. I remember when I was in high school that those things were coming out with like the pirated super games, or there's like hundreds of Nintendo games all on one like pirated CDR, and that was pretty mind blowing. Yeah,
we do. So there's so many games on it that we have our favorites, of course, but then sometimes there's literally a random button. You just hit it random, and it'll show you different stuff. Some of which I've never heard of. They're Japanese games from the 80s that I've never seen.
So
you just
cool.
try them out.
I wonder if like kids now, like they have the best games ever. They look like real life, ultra reality. I wonder if any like the young kids now are even into those old school games. Like, is that a thing where they go to the archives?
I bet like my kids are I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they basically have access to every video game system ever because I don't throw things like that out.
Yeah.
So they will be playing Xbox, and I'm like, here, check out this old pixelated video game, and they're into it. They think it's cool, but
Yeah.
I don't. If it were me, I'd be like, I don't know. I'd rather play this 3D one.
Well, riddle me this, Kevin, as a video game fan, and obviously like playing video games as a kid is like one of the most magical things you can do. So as a parent and as a video game fan yourself, what's like the cutoff point to like where they're not just gaming for like 8 hours a day?
Oh yeah, we set like screen time limits. Only so much TV, only so much video game because our kids will just zombie out.
Yeah. I mean, you
They
can't
just
not. It's
yeah. It's especially with
awful.
the handheld ones. So like a Switch or well, they're older now, but our kids have a Nintendo DS. They'll just bury their faces in that. And then
Yeah.
we've caught our kids like sneaking them. Like
Yeah.
walk by their room late at night and you hear like, be quiet. And like clattering around and open the door and one of them's like shoving their Nintendo underneath the bed. Give it back.
Yeah. Well, because and then you got remember the Pocket Game Boys that came
Yeah.
out, and now I mean that's become, I mean, more of an insane reality with the smartphone and stuff. So, yeah, it's all exciting and scary all at once.
Yeah. That's basically being a parent.
Yeah, man, I have such fond memories, like getting up like bizarrely early, like as a kid, like 5:30 a.m. just to like get more gaming hours in, playing like True Lies on Sega Genesis.
That's awesome.
Like
Yeah.
never being more excited about anything in my life.
I'd be so excited to go to the friend's house who had the game or the game system you didn't have. Do you remember that?
Did you ever pretend to be friends with a kid because he had Nintendo? Horrible feeling, but
Oh,
you could.
horrible feeling.
Yeah,
Come over to their house. Can we get this out?
yeah.
I mean, and I may have been that kid to somebody else too, and I didn't know. I was like, sure, we can play whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you hang out for a while before and pretend you're not there for the Nintendo. That's
Yeah.
also a terrible feeling.
Good move, but it's not cool.
Yeah.
So what'd you work on during this pandemic time? Was this
I made a-
record in the book, the whole project done, or was it something you were working on now?
Well, it was one of those mass procrastination things where it's like I had worked so many hours on it, but I was like too scared to put it out and like too intimidated to organize it because I mean, it's a book. There's like almost 200
Yeah.
pages. So it's like, holy Lord, like, how do you even organize a book? How do you put it together? Who do you send it to? I mean, the whole thing was just terrifying. And I think the pandemic, it's just like, well, you have to do it. Now's the time. You got to finish it. And if you don't do it now, you're blowing it. So, yeah, I don't know. I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself, which is, I'm trying to work on that because it's not good it's not good in general, but this was a case where it was necessary to like, put the heat on thyself and finish the book because, yeah, I think it's the coolest thing I've ever made. And it was easily the hardest thing I've ever made, like 20 times harder than any album I've ever put together.
So I find your general creative output, you do so much stuff, is really interesting because it's cartoons and music and other stuff. And I love how this project kind of brings everything together into one sort of package, if that makes sense. So
Thanks,
was
man.
that the intent? Were you like, I'm going to make a record and a book and put them all out together, or did it just kind of work itself out that way?
Yeah, well, I had been working on all these kind of like thrashy acoustic punk songs, that were kind of like a lot of these coming of age themes that they were stemmed from old notebooks of lyrics I'd found in my parents' basement that I made when I was in high school, and I'm in my early 30s now. So that was kind of, I was like, well, I'll make these into songs. And then I recorded them with my collaborator Spatola in our friend Liv Mueller's basement in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, actually over almost 2 years ago. And when the book came out, I was like, man, these songs fit perfectly with the book, the themes, the anxiety songs, the climbing out of the depression lulls songs. So it just all kind of came together in the end. And it was like the perfect kind of, tornado of little arts media to package together.
Right. So those lyrics, that's interesting that you wrote them so long ago, but did you find those lyrics resonating 20 years later as you're flipping through them?
Um, yeah, some of them, I mean, some of them were embarrassing, and I didn't use a lot of them, but I was all at the same time, I was also like reading through them and being like, wow, this is like pretty good for like a 16, 17-year-old person to write. Because I mean, at the time, you have no concept about what's good, what's not good, what's embarrassing, what's release worthy. And then like as an adult to like look back at some of that stuff, um, I was like, yeah, I was like really happy with the output, and I think back to being a kid in my basement and like wanting to do music, and you just have no rational concept of like how you become a band or how you get signed or like how to even like know a guy's email who works at a label. So, and I'm
Right.
still not sure I really know how it all works, but I think I don't know. I think those songs were really good for like a little 16-year-old person to make. And I think I was embarrassed about them at the time I was making them in high school. And looking back, I'm like, I want to give myself a pat on the back because I was like such a weird little kid in high school and I was so hard on myself. So it's, yeah, it wasn't all for nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I really liked the record. And I found myself listening to I should have listened to Ferris Bueller several times.
Yeah.
Just that first that first line. I wish I could get psyched to go out at night. I told people I'm leaving the house, and I know I'm supposed to, but man, I really don't want to do this right now.
Yeah, you know that feeling? It's I don't know, that seems to be like a standard feeling
Right?
these days for people like, you know, everyone's home has never been cozier with the technology of like electric fireplaces and blankets and Netflix and like
Yeah.
YouTube. It's like, why would you ever leave? Um, and then the thought of like going out and like talking to a bunch of people. I don't know. I just, at least for me, like entering like a hangout situation, I feel like the first like 3 to 5 minutes are always like really challenging and awkward, and both parties are like trying to get a feel for each other's energy, and then
Yeah.
it all kind of sinks in. But I think people are like, oh shit, I gotta wait through like the 3 minutes of like brutal small talk. I'd rather
It's felt like,
watch
what kind of night
Handmaid's
is this
Tale.
going to be? Are we going to get crazy? Is it going to be quiet? Like, how's the other person feel about what we're doing?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, man. Like, do you drink coffee?
Yes.
I wonder if America is like, I'm obsessed with coffee. I wonder if America is just like drinking too much coffee, because I have been off the coffee for a week, first time in my adult life, and it's tough, but I don't have a lot of the same anxieties I had before, which is
Oh, I know.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
know. Man, caffeine amplifies the anxiety a lot.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm having one of those tired days and I like have coffee in the morning and then my day goes on, then I eat lunch and I drink coffee again. And then I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm so wired up and
Right.
everything makes me, it's touchy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to find that balance because like it can really pull you out of the depression, but then
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit, now I'm anxious, but I'm not depressed.
You got to
Um,
push down. How do I want to feel like pushing down what lever?
yeah. I definitely feel more calm and zen, but I also feel like less inspired this week without the caffeine.
Yeah. It's the balance. Um, yeah. And like in general, I don't know. I like how much you talk about mental health and anxiety and depression, whether it's your podcast or like the drawings. It's just not something people talk about in general, but also in music, especially. Like, there's a lot of going out in the world, but there's also a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of being around people, but there can be a lot of loneliness, especially if you're, say, on the road in a van by yourself or with one other person or something.
Yeah.
Is that just, I don't know. I appreciate how much you talk about it. Is that something that's just kind of, you feel like needs to be brought up more, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I want to be useful to people, and I think I think it's been helpful to people, and it's been helpful to me. Honestly, I kind of wish
Right.
I would have like addressed it sooner, because I think all songwriters write and sing about mental health in some capacity, or most songwriters, and that's something I've always done extensively. But then like actually breaking it down and like talking about it and like even talking about specific stuff, like, wow, I get really paranoid and weird when someone doesn't reply to my email. What, do you get that feeling? What is that? Why do we feel that way? And so like there's a lot of stuff like that in the book. It's like how to get out of your own brain, how to kind of get out of that like toilet bowl of despair, I call it, or like the where you know so I would say like sometimes like if I get down or bummed, I almost like stop seeing in color, and then I really catastrophize a lot. I'm like, holy
Yeah.
shit, like my voice is sore, I have a cold, I'm never gonna sing again, it's over, I'll never go out in public, I
Yeah.
can't hang out with people, my music career's over. And I do that and I catastrophize like these really irrational monologues within my own head. So a lot of the book was like kind of like breaking that down and trying to figure out how to not have that happen all the time. So yeah, I hope it's useful to people. I'm really pumped about it.
I always think those things are, and like, I imagine it is for you as the person who created these things to then put them out there. Because I've seen people do it on your posts and stuff and be like, wow, yes, like I feel the exact same thing, even about specific stuff. Like you mentioned the email thing and being like, and other people going, yeah, me too. Like, okay, yes, I'm not alone in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Or like when you're at like a hangout or a gathering and like how do you like how do you break into a social circle? Like
Oh
if there's
yeah,
two people talking, like yeah, I can't interrupt them even though I want to talk to them. That would be weird. And then you know, but
it's like
if
that
there's
double.
more than two people, it's
Yeah, it's like the
easier,
double jump rope thing, and you're like gotta time your entrance. Like, when do I jump in? Is it gonna work? Am I
Yeah,
then gonna
exactly.
trip and feel like an idiot?
And I could never do the double jump rope. That always horrified me. I would always get like cracked in the eyeball. But yeah, like stuff like that. It's like I even like put in a bunch of canned lines I use to like open conversations that seem to work consistently. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
there's some hopefully useful stuff in there for the people.
Definitely. So, does the book was it all stuff that you had done before, or it
Yeah, it
kind of
was like an
collecting it all?
accumulation. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like an accumulation of like 3 years of drawings and maybe like 10 years of ideas kind of
Okay, because
thing.
I wondered how
So
much it kind of pulled together, like what span.
yeah. Yeah, and some of the pages are like really utilitarian, like, what kinds of tricks anxiety plays on your brain. And then other pages are like completely absurd, like um how to combat climate change, feed the polar or no, what is it? How to save the polar bears, feed them climate change deniers. And then there's just a drawing of like a man like going into a polar bear's mouth. But it's so it's both it's two parts utilitarian and one part like completely absurd ham-fisted satire.
Which is wonderful to me.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome. So with the music, like I said, I dug the record, and I thought it was really cool that you had Stephen Page on the album, because I read you grew up loving him and learning
Yeah.
Bare Naked Ladies songs and stuff. So had you worked with him before?
We
What
did a
was his
show
best?
together in Milwaukee.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the first time we like collaborated on a song. Were you like a big BNL fan growing up?
Yeah, I mean, you're just a couple years younger than me, I think, but yeah, I mean, they were super popular. They're really fun. I've seen them live before. I mean, I've been doing music writing and podcasting stuff for a really long time, so I've talked to them before, and they're really cool guys. So,
Sweet.
um, yeah, so like, I just wonder what that was like, because I know how much you liked him. To just, well, now he's on your record.
Yeah, that's trippy. It's really trippy. I mean, I was like pretty blown away by how quick he was to respond. Like Spatola and I were working on the song and mixing it, and we're like, what if I send this to Steve Page? This song totally has a little BNL influence in it. Maybe he'll like sing on it. What the hell? We're like, yeah, let's do it. Fuck it. And so I emailed Steve. I was like, hey, Steve, not sure if this is a big ask or whatever, but you want to sing harmony on this song? That's and he emailed back within like 10 minutes. He was like, yeah, man, sure, send it over. And he turned it around in like 48 hours. So then yeah, boom. And we had Pat McDonald from Timbuk 3 sing on it. I just got off the phone with him because we were talking about like sync licensing deals because we're like sending the song to sync agency,
Yeah.
and he's like he's famous for like having the most integrity out of any songwriter ever. I think he's turned down like a total of like $10 million from
Jeez.
like Ray-Ban and Coca-Cola. He's like famous for turning down huge amounts of money because he didn't want to like he didn't want his song in places he
Yeah.
didn't want his song. So um
That's
yeah, but I'll sell out. I don't, Ray-Ban, whatever. Call in Ray-Ban.
take an endorsement deal. Why not?
No shame anymore.
Yeah. Um. So then, yeah, you said you made these songs a long time ago. So have you been making newer stuff in this pandemic? I'm sitting at home time.
I've got so many songs, Kevin. It's like a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But I also have like song graveyard fear, I guess, where you're like, I just feel like nobody, like most of these songs will never get heard because I don't know what to do with all of them. I can't organize my
Right.
thoughts and like I got to put them in buckets and figure out how to like put them out. But
Well, it's
yeah,
hard. I mean, do you want to do the Brett Newski triple album?
what do you think about double albums? Is that too much? Is that too hectic for
I always
people?
love the double album because you're just like, this is just an epic chunk of music to listen to. But then
Yeah.
again, we are now in 2021, and people, some bands are like, we don't do albums anymore. We only do EPs, like 4 songs at a time. But I think you
Yeah.
could do whatever you want.
No rules. Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
just make music so much faster now because,
Yes.
people are getting better at recording and home studios. So that's a neat thing. It also makes me like worry about the like insignificance of music as a whole, just like how so it's just mostly just digital trash, So in a sense, like promoting 10 songs every 2 years and printing it to vinyl kind of makes sense because it feels like it has more value and you give each song more love. But then there's all kinds of philosophies why
Yeah.
more
You can look at it
quantity
a
is
million
better.
different ways. You could do the song a week thing that some people have done, and that's really fun. But then, usually they collect 12 of them of their favorites into an actual album. Uh,
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
ever have the fear? Because I know some musicians, not fear, where you write new songs and you're like, oh, I was excited to release these, but now I have recorded 12 new ones, and the old 12 just totally don't excite me anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a classic trap that songwriter people fall
Yeah.
into, because you're always trying to make stuff and you're always like 2 years behind or ahead of your album.
Well, sure.
Um, yeah, so I don't know. I like at a certain point, you just kind of want to like abandon all philosophies around any kinds of rules and just like, well, how can we do something completely bizarre and weird? And I don't know, maybe the next album comes out um, as a vinyl, but there's an action figure glued on top of the vinyl and it
I
spins around when you played it. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass, but
I love that idea. I mean, behind me you can probably see
yeah.
all the action figures. So yes, I want a Brett action figure on a Brett LP. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like I'd be liable to break a lot of LP players, but Wolfpack's famous for that. They've always got like a publicity stunt around every album. Like they
Yeah.
auctioned off the last song on their album for like 100 grand to some band or something. So it's all very cool. The limitlessness of it all, as long as
Yeah.
you can not go totally insane from it.
Yeah. Well, there's so many options now. I mean, you can kind of do whatever you want. All digital, only vinyl. You can Wu-Tang it in just one copy. Like that's
You
all that
can Wu
exists.
Tang it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did one thing where we put out a song and it was only available on VHS and there was only one available.
I never heard of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it would get more buzz than it did, but what can you do? You got to just throw shit at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah. I bought, well, it's just out of camera now, but I didn't have one for the longest time for my stereo. I bought a cassette player because there's so many good cassettes now.
I know, man. I want to get a cassette player. Where do you get them? How do you get one?
I literally looked at Goodwill or wherever for a long time, and then couldn't find one. And then I have a buddy who he's he's the ultimate vinyl collector. He just searches wherever he is all the time, and he just has like, oh yeah, I bought this amazing copy of the White Album for $1 from like some garage sale because he'll just every record rack. And so he's like, I'm always at Goodwill, like looking around. And so we had this conversation, and then like 3 years later, he called me and was like, hey man, I got you a cassette player.
I love it.
So he just like found it. I think it cost him $5. He wouldn't take any money for it. And now I have it, which is awesome. But I think, just look around because maybe they make new ones. I have no idea. Probably not.
They might not. You might just have to rummage through like old Grandpa Dennis's attic,
Yeah, right.
I mean, the cool thing is like, if we talk about digital trash and infinite content and infinite songs, I mean, there's no way cassettes and vinyls can ever get less popular. Like they're only going to get more popular, even if it's still a niche. You just kind of, as a creator or as a music fan, I think you just kind of want shit to matter more than just like a digital ether piece of trash,
Well, that's why even the most minor release of anything on a physical format is just cool. It just feels like, well, this is real.
Yeah, I wonder what the next thing could be, What do you think? Next format.
Bring back mini discs? I don't know. Because like
I can see cassettes getting some momentum again.
Cassettes are getting a little momentum. They still track them. Like Nielsen SoundScan still tracks new cassettes, which I think is interesting. There's enough of them being released, but I think there's like one company that makes them. But there's probably no need for innovation for physical physical formats, right? Because we just have the ones we want. I don't know, why would someone invent a new
point? Yeah, good point. I mean, 8 tracks, unlikely that's going to be a thing. So yeah, I think vinyl stays strong, and VHS could have some sort of weird revival.
I bet you VHS sees a resurgence, especially with, someone and it's going to take somebody like Beyonce is going to release a video, but only on VHS. And that will cause like a huge spike in VHS sales, because she said.
Maybe I should try to copyright that idea just so I can sue Beyonce and then I'll never have to tour again.
There you go. Be like, yep, Brett Newski did it first.
That's a real
with Beyonce Knowles.
A real American philosophy. Like,
there you go.
Instead of trying to get better at something, how can I tactfully sue someone so I never have to work again?
Yeah. It's like patent trolls. They buy patents from people for like, $1,000 and then wait for someone else to make that thing and then sue them for $1 million.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I do worry about that stuff. Like, I've worried about someone just coming in and like copywriting my own name or whatever, and like just trying to sue me or put me in prison, because it's like you can't fight these people with like a couple $1 million,
Oh yeah, they do it because they know maybe they'll lose, but they have enough lawyers to keep you tied up for long enough that they can't help but win.
Oh, dark times, Kevin.
Speaking of catastrophizing things, now I'm going to be thinking about this all day. So
that's what I'm here for.
Yep. Oh, the other thing I want to ask about was your podcast. So you started the podcast in the last year or so, right?
Yeah, it's called Dirt from the Road, and it's kind of a combination of like funny, bizarre road stories that happen to musicians and comedians, and then like we also talk about like mental health boosts, and it's mostly a free ball conversation, but those are kind of the root themes of it. But it's gotten some good steam this year. We had got some really Dashboard
cool
Confessional on, and All American Rejects were on there. So it's a bunch of people I think people will have heard of. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
no pressure.
I think it's cool for people who are musicians or comedians that have been touring or know that stuff, but it's also fun for people who don't, because you just get those stories and things from it. It's a fun podcast.
Yeah, I mean the goal of the pod was kind of to talk to these people about things they've never talked about before, because they've like probably done all the same music interview a couple hundred times. So if we can just get weird about it and talk about like their favorite 90s breakfast cereal or their best like exercise that helps their brain, or why the Milwaukee Bucks don't suck anymore. These are all like, there's no limit. We can talk about anything. So it's fun.
I haven't listened to the entire podcast. I've listened to a couple episodes. Have you done the reverse where you're the guest and have someone interview you?
Being the guest is way better. That's why I love doing your program. It's just I don't know. It's less pressure, and I don't know why it's easier, but yeah, I do guest on some podcasts, and we got this book. I'm hiring a publicist for the book, which is gonna like cost me most of my money. It's pretty scary. But so they're supposed to like line up a bunch of pods and stuff for me to do. So
Nice.
we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I had done a podcast before, and then I relaunched this one in a new blog. I kind of left where I was before and started my own thing. So, but it was kind of the perfect time to just start a podcast too, because just being at home a lot, hadn't been seeing a lot of people. So these podcasts have just been fun to just sit and talk to people and talk to new people I'd never met before.
Yeah, man. Pops and hisses for life.
Yes.
What were you doing before this?
So before this, I was the music writer at the Omaha World Herald, the daily paper here, for 12 years.
Nice.
So for a very long time. And I took a less fun sounding job. I work at Creighton University, which is a Jesuit school like Marquette in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I know them.
And I'm the social media guy at Creighton. But I love music and love writing about music and going to shows and taking photos and doing all this stuff. So I was like, well, I'm not going to stop doing that. And this way I can just do it on my own terms. And if like Toby Keith comes to town, I don't have to, desperately reach out for a Toby Keith interview if I don't want to.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool, man. That's great. I'm pumped to explore more of Omaha. We got to make that a more routine tour stop, I think.
It's a good Midwestern spot depending on where you're going, between Chicago, Kansas City, Denver. If you don't want to drive like 12 hours, you can stop for a night and play a show in Omaha.
We got to do it. It's ridiculous we haven't played there yet.
Yeah. When do you think you're going to be doing any touring later this year? I mean, I know it's still kind of fluid, a lot of up in the air sort of stuff, but
yeah, there's some shows coming up. There's a bunch of stuff this summer. And then the fall, I think we're gonna probably do like a little album release run kind of around the book and the new record. So yeah, what do we got? Trying to look at the dates. We're in Louisville, July 9th, and a couple things around Wisconsin in June. What else? We're in the UP of Michigan, August 19th. Yeah, stuff like that. So mostly around the Midwest this summer.
Yeah, and not too far from home for you.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah. The record's out in June? Do I have that right?
Yeah, June 18th. The record in the book's June 22nd. So check it out. I got to shift some units or my career's over, so help me shift some units.
We will do that.
Just send me wads of sweaty cash straight in the mail.
Yes, and they will get a book back.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I really dig the record. And I'm looking forward to other people being able to hear it.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate you having me on, man. This was a good time.
For sure. It was fun talking to you about all kinds of stuff, including old video games. Which
we'll keep it going. Come visit Milwaukee and we'll see you in Omaha.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Well, yeah, thanks for your time. It was good talking to you. Good meeting you. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thanks, Kevin. Talk soon, my dude.
Sounds good.
Later.
Thanks for listening to my talk with Brett Newski. Check out his new book, It's Hard to Be a Person, Defeating Anxiety, Surviving the World, and Having More Fun, when it's out on June 22nd. And also check out the album, It's Hard to Be a Person, the soundtrack to the book, when it comes out on June 18th. Subscribe to the Pops and Hisses podcast on your favorite podcast app, or head to popsandhisses.com, where you can listen to the podcast and find more music news, reviews, interviews, and of course, podcast episodes. I'm your host, Kevin Coffey, and you can follow me on Twitter as @OmahaMusicGuy, or find my page on Facebook by searching my name, Kevin Coffey. My last name spelled Coffey. Thank you, and a few more thank yous to Herdat Media for producing the show, and I encourage you to check out Herdat's entire network of podcasts. There's entertainment, there's sports, there's fitness, there's all kinds of wonderful stuff, and you can check all of those podcasts out at herdatmedia.com/network. That's HURRDAT media.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
a Huda Media Production.